Deb.
Well, the crimes are shocking in themselves, and then you find out who's allegedly behind them. Teenagers accused of stabbings and terror attacks under the influence of extremism. Tonight, we unravel how young Australians are being recruited and radicalised.
A 16-year-old boy is accused of carrying out a terror attack in Sydney's west.
And another teenager has gone on a stabbing frenzy.
An extreme ideology is an ideology that supports the use of violence to further that belief.
Right now, somewhere in Australia, teenagers are being recruited, brainwashed with extremist ideology.
Since 2014, 21 males from 18 and under have been charged for terrorism throughout Australia. At the same time, the authorities have thwarted over 40 terrorist attacks.
Radicalised, angry, deadly.
Officers were called here after the boy attacked a stranger.
6 times Bishop Ma Murray Emmanuel is stabbed before the congregation strikes back.
After consideration of all the material, I declared that it was a terrorist incident.
Teenage terror like we've never seen before.
Is what we're seeing recently of grave concern?
What we have to understand that a radicalised extremist, regardless of their age or gender, pose one of the world's greatest threats to people and human life.
Dr. David Garwell is nationally regarded as an expert on counter-terrorism. He literally wrote the book for investigators.
Once a person's been recruited to adhere to an extreme ideology, we then move on to the radicalisation stage.
He spent the majority of his career as a detective working in the Joint Counter-Terrorism Team.
Yeah, so I was with the JCTT for approximately 20 years.
It's work that flies under the radar.
Over that period, we investigated over 2,000 terrorism investigation threats. Now, these were verified threats that had some corroboration.
One startling fact emerged.
A vast proportion of those 2,000 investigations did include juveniles and males under the age of 18. So this is a consistent problem within the terrorism landscape.
Now we have an insight into the recruitment process.
In order to persuade these individuals, they use incentives.
Those incentives come in the form of false narratives.
And these false narratives include moral obligation, religious salvation and noble causes. Now, these are fallacies, and unfortunately those that are of tender age are gullible to believing these falsehoods.
But what makes a teen pick up a knife and act?
The actions that we're seeing here domestically are a direct reflection of what we're seeing overseas.
Dr. Garwell says the October 7 Hamas attacks last year have inflamed international tensions.
We're seeing an increase in a corrupted interpretation of a religious ideology.
And it's that corrupted interpretation that is feeding radicalisation of our teens.
There's one constant in the process, and that's the existence of a corrupter or recruiter. They're usually well thought of within their community.
The corruptors prey on the young to carry out their deadly dirty work.
These corruptors are very clever at their craft. These people are targeted because of their age, their vulnerability and the lack of maturity and cognitive ability to critically push back and assess the false narratives they've been given.
In effect, they're puppeteers pulling the strings.
Exactly right. So the term lone actor is a bit of a fallacy. We very rarely see a lone actor act alone without support of others or a corrupter or recruiter.
After the attack on Bishop Ma Murray Emmanuel, allegedly by a 16-year-old, counter-terror police swooped, arresting 7 more teenagers aged between 14 and 17. In the Perth suburb of Willetton, police shot and killed a knife-wielding 16-year-old after he randomly stabbed a man. While police did not declare that a terrorist attack, the radicalised teenager had earlier told a 000 operator that he was going to commit an act of violence.
The police who responded acted professionally within their training.
Dr. Garwal fears the crisis in the Middle East will only fuel more attacks here.
It's had a catastrophic impact throughout the world, and we're seeing that those impacts here in Australia with an increase in politically and religiously motivated violence. There's an old saying, and it rings true here: terrorists think globally but act locally.